What did Puff Daddy say? I thought I told you that I won't stop. Listen, Real Conversations with Johnnie Finch. Today I have the Velvet Hammer, Koehler, attorney Karen Koehler from Washington State. $128 million verdict last summer. Do I need to say any more? Well, I can. Wonderful lady, passionate. She's going to show you how she did it from a different way. She's going to show you how you don't have to be the prototype lawyer to go in and succeed and be the best. Washington State Lawyer of the Year. Time's over. What more can I say? I told you I was going to bring you the best, and I'm going to keep delivering it. All I need you to do is comment below, subscribe, let my guests know that you love them so they'll come back, and I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Let's get into this interview. Karen Koehler, the Velvet Hammer. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lawyer Life, Real Conversations. I am excited and delighted today to have the great Velvet Hammer. She is here, guys, all the way from Washington State. You know, I'm in North Carolina, so that is complete polar opposite parts of the country. One of the most dynamic attorneys I've ever come into contact with. Just to have her here today, my heart's been beating. I didn't sleep last night. My wife was nudging me. She was like, what is going on? I cannot wait to talk to the Hammer. Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure.
You know, while I have all these deep, introspective questions to ask you, it's funny that I start where everybody else would. How did it feel to win a $128 million verdict? Like, could you walk us through that moment? Did the jury say it or did the judge say it? How does it work in Washington?
So this was a crazy moment because it wasn't a moment. It was like an hour and a half because there were 43 verdicts to read, if you can believe it. So you do it in person. This is my least favorite part of any trial, is the end when you have to go and listen to the verdict. I am fearless going up to it. All the fighting, it doesn't faze me, but waiting for the verdict has always been painful because you're completely out of control. And as a trial lawyer, right, we're all control freaks. And there's been times where I refuse to go to court for the verdict. I'll only go if my client's going to be there. I just don't want to hear it. Even if I win, I just don't like it. So I figure, why should I torture myself? But here, of course, I had to go. My clients were there. The courtroom was filled. It was in a smaller courtroom, the judge's own courtroom, other than the ceremonial big courtroom where the trial was held, and people were standing up along the edges. And the jury came in, and they had been out for almost 2 weeks.
Ooh.
Yeah, they've been out for almost 2 weeks, and we sat down, and the judge, went through the pomp and circumstance of who's the presiding, and they deliver the verdict to her, and it was, so the jury instructions in this case were like 110 pages long. The verdict form was a small booklet because it had everybody's individual name. There were 43 plaintiffs, and then of course the liability questions. So she went through the liability questions, and she found liability of the two duck companies, 70% to the manufacturer, 30% to the company, the touring company. They found no fault against the state or the city, and there's a backstory of that, which is they were all sued because we were told that there was insufficient insurance when we started this case. We thought there was around 20 million. We found out through a guerrilla email, which I didn't even know. I got a secret email saying they're hiding insurance from you of over 100 million, which they were, over 150 more million, which we found. So, but I kept in the state and the city because it was a crappy bridge, and we did focus groups, and everybody hated the bridge. But it didn't matter that there was no liability against them because the ducks were almost completely insured for our verdict. And then the next question, of course, is, okay, you get past the liability questions, but they still could not like your case. And when we focus grouped the first time, we found there were people that said that the smaller claims, the claims that weren't catastrophic injury, that they were frivolous. And so we retooled our case, and we there's a lot of stuff that went into putting together a long case, 4-month case like that. So we had done what we thought was a really good job of guarding against people not understanding PTSD.
Okay.
And when she started reading the very first verdicts, which were not for the big cases. So when I say big cases, we had 3 wrongful death cases, but only 1 went to verdict. We had major orthopedic cases, but we had no paralysis, and we had no traumatic brain injury of a catastrophic level. When she started reading the verdicts one by one, they started being some of the smaller cases, people that had maybe some bruises, no broken bones, and the average PTSD verdict in this case was $500,000 versus what, so very high for and then our very big cases, the biggest case, which was an orthopedic, multiple fractures, she had a hip replacement, was $26 million, which were sums that were pretty unheard of because there's no paralysis, there's no traumatic brain injury. She's able to work, go to school, and then on down on down the line. So it took like an hour and a half for her to read out the whole verdict, and the television cameras are there right on you, and I just bowed my head, and I didn't cry, but I was just so overwhelmed with, they got it, they heard us, they're honoring the clients, this is so fantastic. And yeah, they captured it in a photograph that was put on the front page of the Seattle Times. Where it's common to have our cases be on the front, maybe not common, but it's common to have big cases have headline pictures and headlines, but it's really uncommon to have a picture of a lawyer.
Yeah, even here, we don't get on the front page.
So the picture of the lawyer on the front page, the very top article under the headline of the entire publication, but listening to that verdict come in, it looks like I'm praying. I'm just very thankful with my head bowed. So it was a good thing, not just for the clients, which it was life-changing for our clients and affirming, but for the community, to celebrate the law, which is what they did. It was a universally beloved decision. It was the highest one that had come down in the state of a single trial, but it was a beloved decision because of what happened.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe how filled
I would have cried. I believe I would have cried. I don't think there would have been I'm listening to you right now, and I'm like, hold up.
Yeah.
I think as long as no one puts a hand on my shoulder, I'm okay. But once the hand goes on the shoulder, it's like, oh my goodness. But I worked for millions of hours on it, and the right thing happens. It works how it's supposed to work. Oh my goodness, I'm having a good time now. So guys, in this particular trial, and I'm going to link, do you have a picture? If you have a picture of the newspaper, I'm going to link that as well below, but I'm also going to link the opening statement. Now, earlier on, I told you guys, and I have already done a review of her jury instruction book, but she's also have a snippet of her opening statement for that trial online. And so I'll go ahead and link that. And with that, she has a microphone and a captain's hat. So you get to see the master in play while she's doing her thing. Why'd you have a mic? What was going on? Do y'all always have mics when you're in court? Or
I hated that mic. So this was a really big trial in terms of how many people. We had to bring in tables for a huge amount of tables for the defense lawyers and the crews, and then the numbers of clients, and media would follow that case and was always in the courtroom. And so we did not have it in the regular courtroom. We had it upstairs in what was the old presiding courtroom of King County Superior Court, which is the size of a high school gym.
Oh, okay.
It's got very high ceilings. There's enough people. I think. Well, they had called 400 jurors, and they all fit in there easily for voir dire. So I think that the capacity in there was about 600 people. So we could not just talk normally, and they did not have lavalier mics, so we had to hold the mic, which was a crimp on my style. You can see.
Yeah, I can see that. I was like, what's this?
You get used to it after a while, and people put it away. But for opening, I like to normally run my own PowerPoint. I couldn't do it because I needed to be able to gesture with my staff. I had to go next. But yeah, I'm holding a microphone.
And also with the captain's hat, because you're telling the story of the captain.
Yeah.
Now, going back to when you first started practicing full time, do you think that you would have had the guts to pull off the captain's hat as a very young attorney as you were?
So I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't even have known that you could do that as a very young attorney, because people that try cases, my role models or people that I saw were way more formal, and they were patterned kind of an attorney, and they used eloquence and, the deep voice and everything to, command the presence of the courtroom. But I started acting out my openings in the 90s. And so I'm very comfortable with that whole thing. I was a captain before. I was an airline pilot captain once in a different opening statement. So it's not a role or a concept that's foreign to me. But yes, I think that you're correct. On a very large case, you have to think twice about, how's a jury going to take that or not? And if they think it's a gimmick, it's not going to go well. But for me, my persona is, I am who I am, and I do it because it feels right. And I never say, like, I'm now going to be the captain and I'm going to put on the captain's hat. And this is when I just am the captain. I'm Captain Gooey Duck or whatever his name is, and I'm taking you for a ride,
When the first time that you actually acted out one of your openings, was there any resistance from the court or from opposing counsel at all?
Not the first time. There was one time I was doing a wrongful death case, and I channeled the dead man, and they hated that. So that drew a lot of objections. So then I decided to tell the story from the point of his wife. So I just changed personas, and I continued on the story from the point of the wife. They also hated that. Now, that should have been okay, but the judge was, for whatever, not comfortable. A lot of judges aren't comfortable sometimes, and you have to be flexible to change up. So I changed. So the jury got to see me go from the dead person to his wife to a strict moderator format. It didn't affect anything because I'm very fluid. I just changed who the moderator was in telling the story. It's just a vehicle to tell the story. It's not a gimmick. It's just to help people put themselves in that scene. I'm setting the scene, setting the stage, and I invite people into the story. It's like going to the movies, which I love to do. You're in it. You feel like you're part of it. I like it better in a big movie theater than a little TV because you feel like you're in it. You suspend reality, you suspend your disbelief, and you're in it, following that story, which is so attractive to us. So that's why I tend to not like the typical moderator, third person neutral, because it's so far removed. I want to invite people in and have them participate.
Yeah, that whole mechanism, I know, and I'm linking all your podcasts on the bottom, because guys, what you have to do to know this lady, you have to go and you have to listen to the Velvet Hammer podcast, because she goes deep into her systematic approach about how she does things. One thing that I like how you talk about so much is like you always so self-aware about what's going on, even in your earlier years when you started speaking about when you didn't have. You felt like you hadn't found yourself yet. You were still very self-aware about how you thought you looked, how other people presented themselves, what the court liked, and then you kind of worked yourself through years. And it seems like just through practice and in embracing the lawyer in your mom, would I be okay to say that?
Yes.
So she comes from a family of very, very smart people. Your dad was a microbiologist.
Yes.
Mom was a biochemist and then turned lawyer.
Yes.
And mom was a little bit feisty.
Understatement.
Tell us about mom a little bit.
Well, yesterday was the 4th anniversary of my mom's death, and it was funny because we had old videos of her, and my family was all on Zoom. We were all eating dim sum because that was our favorite thing to do with my mom. Was we ate a lot of dim sum with my mom, and she is the most unique person I've ever known to this day, and I've known a lot of unique people. But imagine a little 5'2" Chinese woman with 5 children, 3 of whom she had in law school. So she was a chemical engineer, and then she was driving me and my sister and my dad nuts, and he suggested she go back to school, and she decided she wanted to become a lawyer, and she wanted to go part-time because she had 2 children, and they said, no, you have to go full-time. She said, fine. And then had the first year of law school, she had my sister Susan. The second year of law school, she had my sister Jenny. And the third year of law school, she graduated just shy of 8 months pregnant with my brother, Greg. But she was, you'll hear the story in the podcast of her fighting, throwing punches at an attorney in the courtroom. She would tell judges straight to their face that they were prejudiced.
Oh God.
Yeah, straight to their face. It sometimes mainly did not go well for her when she would do that. And it's so unexpected because she just looked like the sweet, Chinese, very attractive, nice woman.
Very.
But when she looked at you, it was like, she was just like ferocious.
So when mom found out you were going to be a lawyer, did she immediately bring you on as an intern, or did you tell her that before you wanted an intern, or she just say, hey, could you come to the office with me? You're going to do this work?
Oh yeah, work was never an option for us. We painted her office. We were her at her beck and call. She had no boundaries between office and family, and but I started working for her when I had to earn money when I was going to college. So I became a full-time working for her person when I was 18.
I got you. Where did you go to undergrad?
UW, University of Washington.
Okay. And so you start practicing part-time, and then you transition into full-time. And at that particular point in time, now I'm in North Carolina. So in North Carolina, we have our bar is, I would say, probably about 85% white. Minorities probably kind of fill in, just like law school, around 13 to 0%, depending on which county you're in. In some of your bigger counties, we'll run into more minority lawyers, but in the smaller counties, you may not see any at all. In my particular county, which is closer to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, we have maybe 2, and some of them are older, some of them are younger. We don't see it as much. What is the makeup of lawyers in Washington State, or where you practice?
The makeup is, I don't want to quote it because they do such a bad job of tracking it.
Sure.
But if it's 10%, and what does that even mean? If it is, it's not a particularly diverse bar, but Seattle is a little bit more integrated in terms of. I don't want to say that they're that integrated, but they, for some reason, especially younger coming in, we do it appears like it's more integrated. And one reason is because we always have progressive governors who make appointments to the judicial appointments. They have to run. But to get an appointment, you're already on, and so then you run as an incumbent. But for example, our Supreme Court just appointed the first Native American justice in the country, and we have I think we only have 2 guys on our Supreme Court at this point. Again, historic. We've been at the 50-50, and that does not match the bar, right? So we have the last appointment was African American female. Again, almost non-existent Supreme Court justices around the country. So those are the last 2. And then we have Latino male, we have a half Chinese, half Latino LGBT. We have, it's super diverse, and the Supreme Court Justice Chief is a woman. And then that plays itself out to a lesser degree in the lower courts, but there is a pretty targeted effort. So it appears like there is more diversity, but in fact, in the practicing bar, it's less. And then in the profession divisions, it's different. So I'm very well versed as far as plaintiff PI lawyers, what those numbers are, and the numbers are not good. They've never been good, and they just have seemed like they've almost gotten worse as time has gone on.
I can't say that I personally know here a lady plaintiff's PI attorney that strictly does that. All of the firms that I know, and actually I do know some defense lawyers, but not plaintiff's attorneys. So coming in your area of practice, you said that the prototype, I guess, would be larger guys with bigger voices. How, and I quoted this, you said, I had to make sure that my voice was heard and they took me seriously. My question to you is, why was that so important?
So it's all about power, and building the power as a lawyer, because otherwise, if you have no power or ability to influence power, you have no ability to help your client. So you can be a paper pusher, but in my arena, which is a trial arena or the plaintiff PI arena, and same for criminal defense arena, frankly, you need to have that ability to move people, whether they're judges or jurors or insurance companies or defense lawyers, in a way that can potentially scare them. That, especially for defense lawyers, that, oh, if we don't settle with her, or whatever, she's gonna ring our clock, or if we don't provide this document, she's going to go to court and get sanctions against us. And getting your reputation as a lawyer is so important, especially for young lawyers. Getting your reputation is everything, in fact, as a young lawyer, because you are what you do, you are what you say, you are how you act. You're not who you are inside. No one knows who you are inside other than you, and no one cares about what your heart says or whatever. They only care about what they can see, feel, touch, understand, hear. So if that part of you inside is screaming to get out, but you don't know how to let it out in a way that's going to touch or move people, then you're in a problem. And I kind of felt like that as a young lawyer, like, okay, I'm short, I have a high voice, I am not imposing, not particularly, oratorial in my speaking style. I'm not going to mesmerize you with charisma all on its own. It just vibrates out of my pores. What is it? How can I even be a trial lawyer? I remember thinking that at times, like, how can I do that? Because the role modeling was Jerry Spence or Johnny Cochran, or these very male, charismatic yellers, preacher type, loud, booming voices that they don't need a microphone in that 600-person courtroom. And what I realized and have realized over time is my style of lawyering really works well for me, and for people that are looking for other role modeling. And in fact, that big booming role modeling isn't so popular anymore. People don't like being preached at or yelled at. They just resist. Lawyers were liked way better in the 80s, 70s and 80s. They started not being liked in the 90s, and even now, it seemed like the tide was turning a little bit. It may turn back if all we do is file coronavirus lawsuits against everyone for the next several years. I mean, that we could lose some of the gains that we've had of showing the lawyer as champion. But having lawyers that are relatable, that build relationships, that can move by persuasion, not by sermon, That's my style. I'm all about persuasion, and I've learned that because I don't meet that stereotype,
Uh-huh.
I actually have an edge. And that's what my kind of mission is to spread to people that don't meet the stereotype, is because you don't meet the stereotype actually is better, because people don't like that stereotype.
Oh.
That stereotype has a harder time. So if you don't meet the stereotype, you have a better path to build a relationship.
I don't like that stereotype. As you were explaining, I was like, I don't like the the $50 million suit.
And the pointing with the fingers and the
I mean, I talk to these guys all the time, and they're awesome, but none of them really act like that outside of court either.
Some of them do.
Well, I can definitely see that. Now, the funny thing in listening to your podcast, it appears as though that if someone were to ask you if you were aggressive, you would say yes, but they nicknamed you the Velvet Hammer, and I'd never heard that before. So I looked, it says, smile so sweet while they hammer you, is a woman at any level that gets things done with grace and eloquence. Now, how do you okay, so while you think you may be aggressive, people think that you're just killing them with grace and eloquence. I don't see that you're outgoing and their observation of you being the same thing. Because I mean, if you know how lawyers are, if they think that someone thinks that something is not so nice, they wouldn't call you the Velvet Hammer. They would call you something, or anybody else.
They would.
Something totally bad. That's a good nickname that you had.
Well, and that's part of the prejudice of our culture, right? Like, why shouldn't I be able to just be aggressive?
Uh-huh.
I used to really get mad about that. Like, why can't I just go in the courtroom and do what the guys are doing? Because the jurors hated it.
Oh.
They didn't, they didn't like me being aggressive, outwardly aggressive. For example, now but they do, but this is how I have to do it. It's become so second nature to me, I don't even think about it anymore. But a woman that comes in pounding is a bitch.
Okay.
And I mean, or other names for that, but it's not acceptable. And especially for women, jurors would have the problem with me. I would talk to them afterwards and they wouldn't like it that I went after so-and-so. Like, why did you have to do that? So for me, whether it's right or wrong, and maybe things have changed a little bit, because I'm very 90% of what I do is feel my audience so I can figure out how to message with them. Mm-hmm. But they have to give me permission. As soon as I can feel them saying to me, even though without words, as soon as I can hear them saying, go get them, I will go get them. Mm-hmm. But I don't do it before then. So it's a modified, but yes, I'm very aggressive. I'm very blunt. I'm very, you say a lot of it pre-trial with me. I'm just very matter of fact. I don't threaten. I just say like it is. But in trial, and particularly in trial, but even in front of judges, I tend to be nice until I'm not nice. Mm-hmm. But I start off being gracious and courteous, and my voice is always like this. I don't yell. Even with my children and my dog, I'm not a good yeller. I don't like to yell. But I can get a deadly look in my eye. Apparently.
Oh my goodness! As I'm listening to you speak, while I follow, like you are so systematic in your approach to things. I think we may be twins in that we both feel the way that we feel our way through the court. Because I have a tendency to turn people off. One, because they're not used. They don't know what to expect from me when I get there. And so the first half is I'm letting everybody know that, listen, I don't want any problems. I'm here to do a job. We're here. I know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna educate you a little bit. If we have to turn up, we are. If we not, I'll hold myself as long as I have to. And a lot of times in criminal defense work, judges are okay with juries convicting, right? If they think it's close. they're okay with juries convicting. And so if there's something, the small things that you can do while a trial is going on to try to steer it one way or another, they'll give the state the nod a little bit. And so also I have to pick my spots very carefully when it comes to like super aggression, whether it's towards a witness or whether I really assert myself on the judge just to let him know I'm not trying to steal the show. Because a lot of times if I'm walking to a court, okay, this is an African-American lawyer. Is he coming in here to, try to turn this into something else? I get that look all the time. Even before court, the judge called me was like, we're not going to do this X, Y, Z today. And I'm like, Judge, I haven't even said anything. I don't know what you think about me. I've never been in front of you before, but what makes you think that I'm going to try anything that would not be allowed? So all fun things. And it brings me to your daughters that insisted that you do, 3 daughters, Noelle, Alicia, and I missed one.
Christina.
And Christina.
Yeah.
Insisted that you did a podcast. And they insisted that you did a podcast because you never talk about your struggles as a woman in a minority. And they thought that it was so important that you give this perspective. I think that it's that important because if I would have had it 8 years ago, I would be a better lawyer today. Today, I share these things not because I could care less about who could hear this information that doesn't need it, but for the people that need it, we need to know that we're not crazy. So when I'm listening to your podcast and you're navigating being in an uncommon place and culture shock, all of this is great for me because it lets me know that I'm not crazy. When you're in a place and you're one of 20 and you're about to say something, but culturally it's not the norm, it doesn't mean that it's not right. It means that they've probably been doing something wrong for years and years and years. Please share with us a little bit. And again, guys, y'all got to go to the Velvet Hammer podcast about your struggles earlier on with just coming into your own while being a minority and a woman at the same time. And even to the extent that you didn't even want to join certain groups earlier on.
So let me just start off this fantastic topic by telling you that last week I was approached by a national group to give a talk, and the way that they presented it to me, I listened to the voicemail, and it said, it was a little rambling, and I said yes, I would give the talk, but here's what the voicemail said, and it said it right after I did a podcast about this very subject. It said, we realized that we hadn't had a female or a minority on in a long time, very long time, and so we thought you'd be a great guest. And I thought, you know what? It doesn't even matter if I'm a young lawyer or an old lawyer. It's still there. They're going to look at me and go, twofer. I can get a twofer. I can get a twofer there. And, and they weren't meaning to be disrespectful.
Oh, my God.
But this goes on. I've been on CLE committees. I know that it goes on. We used to have quotas, and thank God we did have quotas, because otherwise there would never have been opportunities. But come on. Are all the only good lawyers white men? Is this how it works? I mean, no, this is not true. However, that's who's currently still in power, and who's in power invites their buddies, and their buddies are similar because people tend to flock together of similarities as a generality. So do I wish that was in the past? I did. It's never going to be in the past for me, or probably for any of us. It's how we look at it that changes our ability to deal with it. If all we do is look at it in a way of aggravation, the unfairness of it, my kids wanted me to do this because they see all the little steps I have to do that other people don't have to do. Just to dress for trial as a female is different than a guy. You can wear the same thing. And as a female, the messaging that's going on, what I have to communicate by messaging, et cetera, I have this Teams thing that I need to collapse because it just keeps going on and on and on. Trying to get out of it. So this is what I have a problem with in terms of the legal profession, is we are in this fantastic part of our universe as Americans, which is the legal branch. It is what I always call it. It's my whole, courtroom is my holy place. I feel like it is my holy place when I'm in a courtroom, but I feel like I'm doing a holy mission. This is our holy place, field of the practice of law, filled with so many progressive people, and yet it's still so racially divided. Who's at the top? How did the people that are at the top, how do they even get there? Why do people get invited to speak here or there or joining law firms? And, why does that even exist? Why should it even exist? And yet it does exist. And when you talk about, well, there's just so few people that are entering law school. Well, why are you waiting till law school? And people will also then say, well, there's so few minority attorneys coming out of law school, and we try to get them, but the big firms get them, or the government firms get them. And I say stuff like, well, why is that? What are they doing that you're not doing to get a more diverse group of lawyers into your law firm? What efforts are you taking? People aren't you can't just sit there and say, I'm open, just come see me. That's not how it works. You got to go get and find out and build a relationship. So it's a pet peeve subject of mine. I've seen so little progress. I thought when I started in the 80s that it was just going to get better, and in my opinion, it hasn't gotten better. Maybe I'm being pessimistic, but the numbers don't show that it's getting better. It is very aggravating. So my kids wanted me to do the podcast because, like I said, of all the extra steps that I have to take to do everything that are second nature to me. I can't just go out and pretend that I'm not a female and a minority in court. I can't do that because I don't know who's on that jury panel. And no one's going to ever say, I'd rather that you were a white guy and then I'd trust you more. Or, I wish, if you would just be who I am, if you would just be a normal person and not, a different kind of person. And like, by the way, what are you? You're all mixed up. Like, we don't even know what you are. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Like, I feel like the older I get, the more Asian I look, because my eyes, as I get older, my eyes are getting smaller, but they used to be huge all the time. And so people never knew what that was all about.
So your daughters
it's very frustrating.
So your daughters were actually with you while so you taking them to the office, kind of like your mom took you to the office, and is that how they're able to see the extra loops that you're jumping through?
Yeah, and most of them all worked for me at one point in time, whether it was, in a college, during the summertime in college, or high school projects, or my daughter Alicia has done our entire website. My daughter Noelle did my podcast logo. My daughter Christina is one that even suggested I do a podcast. They're just very integral in my life. I do want to say that as a legal profession, the lack of effort to figure out how to make the profession reflect the general makeup of America, if that doesn't get taken care of, it's going to marginalize and really harm the legal profession. I really do believe that it's just been neglected for so long. And yeah, they create these leadership groups, or they do these little piddly efforts, but there's no, it's like with the coronavirus. Okay, my least favorite topic. But you got all these governors, right, that are doing their own thing, and then you got the federal government doing whatever they're doing, but there's no actual big plan in place and a roadmap of how to do it. And that's what I feel like has happened here, especially with the legal profession, which should be leading that effort. Here's one more pet peeve I have. I was on my minority caucus of American Association for Justice for years. A marginalized group, may I say, because here's the thing: if you're in an organization, they always want to create a minority caucus, and the minority caucus is supposed to fix all the I'm a very plain speaking person, okay?
Right.
But they think that the minority caucus is supposed to fix all the problems of lack of diversity in an organization. Okay, A, why is that the minority caucus's job? And B, what funding are you providing? So if you're ever in a minority caucus, if you're not a line item on the budget, you are a token. You better be a line item on that budget, number one. Mm-hmm. And number two, you need to just say, hey, this is our job. Our job is going to be A, B, and C, and your job is, your job, rest of the organization, is to make this happen. Because we're not going to just spend, we're going to be the phone banks. We're going to go give talks to schools. We're going to, be tokens. We're going to tell you how to look for diversity. Like, why should that be put on the people that are already marginalized, that have a hard enough time just functioning in an unequal situation? But line item, you should be a line budget item. Otherwise, you have no power. Look, it's about, we go circle all the way around. Why? Because you need to have power to make change. You need to have power to represent. You need to have power. And power can come in all shapes and sizes, but fundamentally, you have to have it. You have to have power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think back to your podcast when you mentioned, and I had to ask myself this because I didn't know the answer, and then I want to ask you. But so when I first started practicing law, I was a little crazy because I didn't have any social norm lawyer rules for myself. So I had TV and I had what I learned in law school. So I there's a lot of things that I would have done a lot earlier that I won't do now, kind of in reverse, I guess, for you, just because I realize what happens when you do things and they don't work. I don't know if I ever felt, so I never felt like I wanted to be accepted, but I knew I didn't want to be shunned, right? But I couldn't figure out whether it was from my peers or from the bar. I didn't know whether, because while I'm there, obviously I'm concerned about my client, and if people are there, and I guess it's in a criminal defense court, what you'll have is the peanut gallery or whoever there, they'll be African American for the most part, and then on this side it will be our counterparts. And I don't know if I was more afraid of appearing away in front of my peers or being shunned by the profession, but I think one advantage that I had was I didn't start practicing until I was about 32 years old. And so I understood bottom lines a little bit more. And if I had started practicing law earlier, it would have ate me up because I'm still trying to, in my 20s, figure out exactly who Johnnie Finch is, what my strengths are. And obviously you've always just been so self-aware. On your podcast, your friend may ask you a question about a small amount of time. You'd be like, well, I remember at that time, I remember that particular time that I really had an affinity for vanilla ice cream. And so you always, and I think, even law school for me was probably the biggest preparer for law practice for me, just because of the dynamics in itself. Having to be in the circumstances that we are in. I mean, it looks just like law school, looks just like law practice. So that's one of those things that, adaptation is. But earlier on, do you think that you were more concerned about your peers or the actual bar when it came to not fitting in? Not that you wanted to fit in, but not feeling accepted or being rejected or shunned because you were not the prototype?
Well, at the very beginning, it was definitely my peers, because not only was I not the prototype in terms of female and minority, but I wasn't a full-time lawyer at the very beginning, which was like a second-class citizen. Everybody wanted to be a full-time lawyer and then go up the partnership track. And here I was not being a full-time lawyer because I was going to raise babies and chase my husband around the world for a couple of years. And so ultimately, once I got over that realization of, I can't be on that track, which I wanted to be on, it's for me, I just kind of put it away and focused on what I needed to focus on. And by the time I was ready to go full-time in practice of law, a lot of my friends from law school were already burnt out, and I was just raring to go. You know, that's the beauty of the legal career, is that's a long time that you can work as a lawyer. And sometimes we put all these pressures on us that we want to do, you know, all this immediately. And for young lawyers, remember I told you, reputation and power, like these things are these concepts are, they're trite, but they are incredibly important. Young lawyers make so many mistakes. And this is another one of my podcasts, you probably heard it, of advice. I tell them, especially on these listservs, don't ask people say, ask any question no matter how stupid. I said, don't do that. Because when you start asking stupid questions, then you're known as the person that asks the stupid questions. People will remember that. Find your few close confidants or a few mentors and ask them the stupid questions.
Oh, yeah.
Because they won't betray you, but don't go asking stupid questions to the world at large. What you do, what you say, who you are is not who you are right inside. So for me, I was protected in that way because I was only practicing part-time, and but I always had this really built in to my psyche of everything that you do needs to be the best that you can do, because otherwise you're not building your reputation the way it needs to be built. It needs to be built the best. Everything has to be your best effort. None of this half-ass stuff.
So at the time, what was the time period when you were part-time again? The duration?
Yeah, from law school until 1990. So 1990, well, almost 2000. The biggest part of it was in the 90s.
So in the 90s, there was a yearning to. I mean, so at that point you were raising your daughter, so you were fine, or were you happy? Were you pumped to get into full time, or?
I put it on hold, and I made myself, you know.
How were you mentally about it? And when I say I mean,
those are my Martha Stewart years, where a person that's as hyper and high energy as I am, I made all of their clothes. I made draperies. I had rose gardens. I had, you know, it was disgusting. I can't even look at Martha Stewart anymore without getting hives. But you find ways to cope, just like we're finding right now. Yeah. You know, being locked in our houses, you run around in circles, and you get through it. But I never would ever regret it, because my relationship with my children is so different than what my white male peers' relationships with their children were back then, or the people that I looked up to, my mentors, because trial lawyers back then were just gone, and they were not part of their families, and they had wives.
That's 10 years. When I started practicing, I got married, I had a baby babies back to back, and my wife moved where we were, and there was a 2-year period where my wife stayed home and kind of worked part-time. But what surprised me was my wife, you know, when I first met her, nothing about her said that she would ever think about staying home at all. But at the first day that she got there, you know, she was so happy to be with the kids that I don't even think that she actually thought about it until that 2 years, and she was like, hey, this is my time. And so that was one of those things where I was happy when we had that 2 years. Now she can't sit still. I haven't seen my wife since since we've been on quarantine. She's doing more things than me, and I'm like, hold on, I don't think this was the plan. But I mean, that was a great. So you kind of able to like ball up your legal energy until the 90s, which would have been the early 2000s at that point, and then bust on the scene. Everybody else was burning out, and you are coming a ball of lightning into court, ready to take over, because you already have. And I mean, when they'll see that you actually had the brain of a lawyer while you were working with your mom. You were writing appellate briefs while you were in undergrad. I still can't write one. If I had to write one today, it would not. I mean, if I didn't have any type of template to go off, it would not be good. So you already have the brain. It's like I cannot imagine just during that time. It's like, oh my goodness, I have worked so hard at something. So this is the fruit of your labor. But it wasn't.
Well, I never stopped being a lawyer. I mean, I still worked. I just didn't work full time. But I do want to talk about I don't know how much time we have, and you can always cut me off, but
I'm
one
not
thing
gonna
you
cut
talked
you
about,
off. I will be here until 12 o'clock tonight.
one thing you talked about was the ability to write, the ability to speak, the ability to think. And there's something in our brains that helps us if we choose to listen to it. There's a connection process in our brains that's there if we can let down our guards, which are normally fear-based, and absorb it. And to me, that's one of my commitments that I think does make me a good trial lawyer in particular. But that is allowing yourself, being able to be creative quickly, and being able to make all of this kind of judgment call. So for example, I have an inner dialogue in my brain that is nonstop. And I think all of us do. You can't give me a video camera or now an iPhone and not have me narrate every single video. I just do it by nature. It just comes out of my mouth because I don't have a barrier between my ability to speak and think. I can do it all. But it's like I have this little gauge that's always going in that's measuring everything. So I'm very intuitive, and intuition is simply the ability to kind of subconsciously act, but based upon the data that you've been taking in. So you're taking in, as people, we're taking in everything, right? I'm in my cabin right now, hiding from coronavirus. I'm looking at the trees and the water and all of this stuff and talking to you, and my dog hasn't barked yet, but she probably will, and all this different stuff is going on, and you're conscious of it. And then what comes out of your mouth has to be pretty measured. So I may seem like I am just one of the most, word vomit people. It just comes right out of me, but not true. I have all these little bits and rules, and even in my writing. So in my writing of my blogs, people would sometimes get very nervous because I do diary out all my trials. My last trial diary was probably a couple hundred pages, and I send them out to AAJ lists or people that are on my friends lists. I don't publish them because it would be bad against the rules. People have gotten very nervous, and they said, "Aren't you worried about the defense getting that?" I'm like, "No, not at all." In fact, and people have realized, oh, sometimes she even baits the defense if she thinks that they're reading them, because it's all calculated. And I hate to say that because I don't feel like I'm a calculating person, but I think I am, in that I'm taking in all this data and I quickly in milliseconds processing it out. And so I know that, hey, I'm never going to talk about my client bad. I'm never going to talk about my co-counsel bad. I'm never going to let the defense know what I'm thinking. But if you read what I write, it just seems like it's just my stream of consciousness. So I think as human beings, and especially lawyers, that is a skill set that you need to have, especially in a trial lawyer. And it's a multitasking skill that doesn't sound like multitasking because it's so internalized. There's so much internal going on that you're multitasking in order to do this presentation, even here with you and me. I mean, I could be thinking, and I am actually thinking way down the road or way back to what we've already said, but I'm trying to stay on track and just talk about these things. So that process of being able to connect with your inside, outside, is one of the least explored processes. I've never seen it taught in a law school. I've done trial advocacy classes and trainings and teachings, and I don't see it happen. People don't talk about it. So for example, I finished a 4-month trial. I don't care if it's a 4-month trial or a 4-day trial. I do not have any notes that I've taken. I don't take the notes. I don't try to go back. This for doing a closing argument, right? I don't go back and look through my notes to try to figure out what I'm going to say. That's not how I process. The way I process is I'm in the moment. I trust myself. I know that case better than anyone in the courtroom. This is what I trust. I trust that I know that case better than anyone in the courtroom. And I give myself permission to breathe. So the case you talked about where I wore the captain's hat, I hadn't pre-planned that months in advance. I hadn't pre-planned that a week in advance. I knew I was going to channel something because it sounded, to tell, my closing argument was over 3 hours long. And I knew that I had to do it, or the opening was an hour and a half. I knew I had to do it in a remarkable way to engage people instantly. So I knew I was going to do the moderation thing that I often will do. But I hadn't figured out what I was going to be. I thought maybe I'd be the wheel or an axle housing or, you know, an inanimate object. And it was only the day before that I decided to be the captain. So it's not like I wrote anything out. Now I use PowerPoint, and my PowerPoints are my outlines but they're only visuals. I don't put words on my PowerPoints. They're just like a slideshow. It's to narrate. It's to go with my narration of the story. Now, I couldn't do that if I didn't have an open communication within myself and trust myself to be able to do that. I would do with what everyone else does or seems to do, which is to write it out, to practice it, to time it, to write it out more, and either read it or memorize it. I'm a terrible reader in terms of, it just neuters me. It's like you'd be looking down, it would be terrible. And memory, I've never been good at memorizing anything, including my own children's names. So I let it flow. I let it go. It's the most wonderful feeling in the world. You feel like, because it's your stage, it's my holy place, and I just let my heart and my brain just go with it. And it takes you wherever it's going to take you in that kind of a way. But there's that internal structure thing that people pay no attention to, that willingness to overcome the fear of trusting yourself, that you know it. Mm-hmm. That's the key right there, is that little internal structure, that invisible barrier that is the big thing. If you can deal with that thing, that fear that you won't get it all right. I don't have that fear. I know I'm not going to get it right. I'm going to say a name wrong. I'm going to do something wrong. And guess what? The jurors like it. They don't like me to be perfect. They like to see me say a wrong word here or there because they know it's not rehearsed. Yeah. They connect with that. They connect with the real. They want to be told a story by someone that they can believe. And they don't know if they can believe you initially. And you have to show them very, very quickly that they can believe you. And the best way to do that is to be able to speak from the heart.
Man, how do you know it's okay to trust yourself?
Well, you have to have done the work. Mm-hmm. Do you know that case better than anyone else? Mm-hmm. If you don't know the case better than anyone else, it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you will know that case if you've worked on it. And you will know the case if you have a process to let it inside of you quickly. And I'll give you another example. So in this case, initially, I had about a dozen co-counsels. And the plan was that everyone would present their own client in direct examination. But after working with Artemis Malakour, who's a jury consultant, she didn't work a lot on the case, but several hours I would talk to her about, like, how should we structure this and stuff. She felt that it would be too distracting to have a lot of different people come in, and that there needed to be, me, and then some help from Andrew, the guy that you also heard on the podcast. But he didn't. I did every single client. So over 43 people, I did their direct exams. All of them in person, except for I think one. Almost half of them with interpreters, and some of them I had never met before. Now, and I hadn't really paid attention to their stories either because I thought someone else was going to present them until it was too late. So technically I didn't know that story better than anyone else in the room, but the client did. And I knew enough. And I still trusted it because we're on the right side. You have to believe that you're on the right side, doing the right thing, right? If you have that fierce commitment, that can overcome the fear. You have to have that fierce knowledge that it's your holy place and you're on the right side. You're the good and they're the bad. I know it sounds simplistic, but there's that conviction within inside of you that will help you get that membrane of fear of, I need my nose, I can't do this, I don't know, that will let it go so you can flow. Yeah. Because you are your own best, tool / weapon / seeker of the truth.
I think that's probably a life thing.
Yeah, well, you're a committed person, and it's kind of weird to me because people always describe me as, really passionate advocate, and I don't think of myself that way, but I suppose I can see why people would think that, because I'm not neutral. I'm not monotone.
Yeah,
Why are people monotone?
Because they're uninteresting.
But how do people become monotone to begin with? They
school maybe?
Well, I really think it's because they have that barrier up.
Oh.
They don't want you to see the emotion. They want to be, they want you to see them in a particular way. And there was a great lawyer from Hawaii. Her name is Janice Kim. She used to give a lot of speeches, and she used to talk about, in law school, they give you a lobotomy.
Okay.
And they try to teach you, they kill off your old self, and they try to make you they give you a lobotomy. And you're supposed to talk in a very structured way with, kind of military precision, no use of the word long pauses if necessary, very intelligent sounding with high level of sophisticated words, and clipped, very objective tones, because as lawyers, of course, we are highly intelligent people that everyone should listen to, because we can be encyclopedic in our knowledge, and you should be scared of us. Right?
Exactly. Oh my God.
How many lawyers talk like that? How many lawyers talk like that? Or, I came from Yale, and I'm superior than you, and I heard that your law school doesn't even exist anymore, Karen. You came from a bad law school. Guilty as charged.
It's funny because if I had have been a little younger, I would have been convinced that I couldn't be a lawyer based off of law training. And I talk about it frequently. There was one professor that pulled me aside and said, "Hey, man," he was actually a practicing lawyer, Stephen Pfeiffer. He pulled me aside and he would say, "Hey, man, I know you're having a hard time, but what's inside of you is what's going to make you a great lawyer, not all of these things that they're teaching you." And that was kind of like my one moment of enlightenment, because I obviously didn't get it through what they were trying to teach me, although I needed it. Obviously, I needed to see it, at least a sample of what it was. But what it showed me was like, if I really, really tried, I could do that. But I think this is better. And as a matter of fact, I know this is better because at that time I was around 30 years old. Had I been 22, like, my track was definitely what it needed to be. Also wanted to shout out Miss Jackson for introducing me to you. This has been a great day. I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep last night. I mean, I haven't been sleeping during quarantine anyway, but it was definitely about 4 o'clock in the morning. Just so many layers. And I think that lawyers in general can be fun people, but when you see several different layers of just brilliance along with personability, with just that self-awareness, I think that's what makes one excellent. I was watching a documentary on Kobe Bryant the other day, and he was a really good basketball player.
Yeah.
And he always knew where he was at. They would ask him a question. He would be like, "Well, I'm 35 years old. My ankle's hurt, but I'm going to work really hard, and we'll see where we at." I can't control what you guys are going to say with me. I know I'll get back on the court. We'll see where if we win, we win. We don't, we don't. But he was never like jockeying with the media and saying, "No, I'm the best player. I'm the best player." Hey guys, I'm gonna do what I can do. I can control what I can control. And so I appreciate that so much. This has just been a great time. I just thank you so much for coming. There's the book that I'm gonna link below, Jury Selection. This segment was supposed to be Jury Selection, but after just seeing how amazing you are, I could not waste it. And so therefore, everybody that's watching this, you need to go get the book on jury selection. To the law students, go get the book on jury selection. It is perfect. If you have a jury selection tomorrow, go get the book. Like, you could get the book today, and you'll be better than, I think, 75 to 80% of the people just from reading the book. Go see the blog. Go learn that it's okay to be yourself. The human side of lawyering is great. People appreciate it, and they'll go to you forever. I mean, the moment that you start being yourself is the moment people like you, and they will follow you wherever you are, regardless of where you are. They'll find your number, even if you're not online, and we know online is so big. But thank you so much, Velvet Hammer, for coming, Miss Karen. I appreciate you. And comment below and let me know, and let Miss Karen know how much you appreciate her and you want her to come back and what topic she can speak about, because she might have some time during quarantine. So just let me know. Thank you so much. And please, please close us out in any way that you would.
Johnny, you're so fun to talk to. And one thing that I think that makes you a good lawyer is that you're so real by nature. And part of being real is, even though you might care what people think, the willingness, the bravery involved of being vulnerable, which is letting people see that, you know, who the real you is. And sometimes it could be an embarrassing thing that you want to share with someone just to make them feel at home. And it's something that I used to give a talk called, you know, Oprah. And I do, you know, direct exam the Oprah way. And WWOD, what would Oprah do? You know, I used to talk about that. But one thing that she used to always do would be she would give to get. She would give something of herself, some story of herself, to any of her interviewees, some little thing. It could just be so small that you don't even notice it. Mm-hmm. And then that opens up people's willingness to connect with you. And you have that by nature, and everybody has it by nature, but you've already tapped into it. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, ma'am. I'm not crying, but I got a little tear in my
Yeah. I mean,
yes. I'm doing my mental health thing here, guys. So if a tear comes, it might be allergies, it might be a little bit of emotion, it might be both, but I'm trying to just make sure when we get back, that I'm a whole lawyer and not a half one. So I really appreciate your time, and I thank you so much. Guys, thank you. Please comment and subscribe, and also go today and listen to the Velvet Hammer podcast. I'm going to link that. Also, I'm going to link a picture of Mom. She's a very nice looking lady. I saw the picture, and the family and the kids. So you guys can see the whole family. But at any point in time, just Google Karen Koehler. You'll see everything that she has going on. She lays it out for you perfectly. The funniest thing is when you're a little more, it's like, if this is opposing counsel and you are looking for information, here you go. So there's a little link. You don't have to snoop. Here it is. This is everything about me.
It's true.
If I read that, it would just totally disarm me altogether. Anyway, guys, thank you. This is Real Conversations with Johnnie Finch. Thank you. Signing off.
Bye, Johnny.